Coming up on La Plaza, writer Michele Serros talks with Illan Stavans about poetry, skateboarding, and ethnic politics.
Michele, you're the author of 2 books, Chicana Falsa and How to Be a Chicana Role Model. Both titles seem to me to convey a sense of deceit or something that is false. What is falsa for you? False, what is it?
Well, I feel like both titles I didn't come up with. Both of those tags were given to me, tags I didn't want at the time. You know, Chicana Falsa, meaning fake Chicana. That was a name given to me by a childhood friend because she had an idea of who and what a Chicana was. And I didn't fit that category.
What did she have in mind?
She had someone pretty much like herself and other girls in my neighborhood. A little bit of tough homegirls, didn't go to school, partied a lot, had a uniform of Pendletons and khakis. I, on the other hand, was a school student, but a bad student. I was barely in school. Yet I would talk about going on to college, becoming a writer. In my neighborhood, women didn't enter that type of field, didn't have those aspirations. So I was very fake. I was a falsa. And once I started publishing and visiting schools, universities, I felt right away put into this position, this new title of a Chicana role model. And I'd be introduced that way a lot, you know, and next to the Chicana role model. And I was very uncomfortable with that title, and I would ask other friends or colleagues who have been published, who have college degrees, you know, are you ever called a role model? And the friends I've asked who weren't of color were like, no. I mean, no, I've never, and I was beginning to feel that I was this exception because I am of color, because I am Mexican American, that these accomplishments made me such a role model, and then I had to speak for something more than a few things I've done. And my other friends, it was sort of just like expected.
So this level of being inauthentic has not disappeared. It's still with you. Are you still unlike other Chicanas? Or are you more like them after you began publishing?
Oh, no. I publishing or not, I feel...
It's still with you.
Yeah, it's still with me. And, you know, a lot of people ask, well, what kind of literature do you write? What is it? And I rarely say, you know, it's Chicano literature. I'll say it's very Southern Californian. You know, I grew up 4th generation Californian. To me, all my experiences, the beach, the malls, avocados, very Californian. I happen to be Chicana. And that's how I would definitely describe my work, with a tinge of humor, hopefully.
You grew up in Oxnard,
Yes.
California, which is about 60 miles from LA.
Yes.
Tell me about it. Tell me about the town. Tell me what it meant for you to grow up there.
Well, Oxnard is very rural. I mean, I grew up with chickens, goats, ducks. It's also a beach community. The beach is just a few freeway off-ramps away from my home. And growing up in Oxnard and then becoming a teenager, I always hated the sound of Oxnard. It was like I was coughing up phlegm or something, Oxnard or something. And I would romanticize it and tell everyone, oh, I live between Malibu and Santa Barbara. You know, that sounds very romantic. At that time, there was a soap opera called Santa Barbara. So everyone knew, of course, Santa Barbara and Malibu, of course. So it sounded, you know, very glamorous to live in such a city. I always downplayed it. And finally, when Chicana Falsa was published, I felt I owed it to Oxnard, because Oxnard was really the basis for so many of my stories. As a student in high school, junior college, universities, English professors were always telling us, write what you know. Writers travel. And I would travel, I'd, you know, sit down at my desk. I would want to write about the skyscrapers of New York, the grassy knolls of England, the beaches in Spain. No. it all went back to Oxnard. It went back to that rural community. I hate it so much. I could have saved so much money on airfare.
Tell me, what your sports when you were growing up? You talked about being near the beach, and I know also you like skateboarding.
Yeah, I was an avid skateboarder.
And how does that connect to your literature? Does it connect at all?
I think there's, I mean, I haven't written a poem about skateboarding or the ramp, you know, in the backyard or anything like that. But no, I think there's references, characters who are skateboarders or references to that type of culture. I grew up always, I said I was a bad student in high school because I was always at the beach. That was the cool thing you did. If you were anyone, you ditched and went to the beach, you hung out at the beach.
Were there many Chicanos with you at that point, at the beach?
No, there was a few.
Skateboarding?
A few Chicano surfers.
Yeah.
Actually one who, it was such a big thrill because he was actually the Tri-County surfer, and he was actually, he is Chicano, and it was such a big deal, I remember, to see him whenever I did at the beach, because he was, you know, this Tri-County surf champion, Mexican, and really broke stereotypes that a surfer was a long-haired blonde dude. And ironically, he and I started dating, and then ironically find out we're like sort of distant cousins. You know, so,
oh, really?
Yeah, so it was even more like, wow, cousin surfer, you know. And no, I was one of the few people that were Mexican that hung out at the beach. But it was such a status symbol to show up Mondays at school with a tan, to show up dark, because he sort of told everyone, I was at the beach all weekend. And I would just, you know, of course have the darkest tan, but I do remember family members, older family members, really getting on me for being too dark. And that was the last thing they wanted, was for someone in our family to look too dark. We didn't have the privilege of having a California tan. We looked like maybe we were working all day, you know, in a field or an orchard. Some of my family members who tried to keep me out of the sun were ones who had those experiences. Being Chicano and dark wasn't something that was desirable. On the other hand, I didn't have the experience of working in an orchard. All I knew was like, I'm hanging out with my friends and getting a great tan. So that really set up the basis for this new book I'm just revising. And I have not mentioned the ethnicity of the protagonist at all. We do know that she is darker than her friends, but it's because of her tan. She's always at the beach. And I know this new book's going to question people's stereotypes. There's no names, no last names, just, it'll be very interesting to get the feedback.
I understand also you have a collection of skateboards?
Yes.